Division staff that are participating remotely. If you could please introduce yourself.
Dana Young, Preschool Promise Program Manager.
And Margie, I think.
Margie McNabb, Early Learning Professional Systems Specialist.
And then I'll go
around.
Brett
Walker, P3 Alignment Specialist.
Hi, Brett. Anyone else from ELD that's not here with us in the Grand Ron room? All right, then we'll go around.
Joan Blau, Community Systems Director.
Anthony Martirano, Grant Specialist.
Andy Bales, Molnar, Preschool Improvement Specialist. Angela Simpson, Community and Stakeholder Engagement Coordinator. Lisa Demo, Special Projects Coordinator.
Good morning, everyone. Denise Swanson, Early Learning Hub Manager.
Good morning. John Reeves, Emmett Dollar Specialist.
This is Ann Morrison, the Preschool Development Grant Manager.
This is Kelly Taylor, and Administrative Specialist for the Programs Unit.
And Gina, I think you already introduced yourself,
Yep.
right? And then this is Gwen Bassel, Early Learning Programs Director. So wow, a lot of people on the call today. Thank you so much. And I think we're going to begin. So are we ready to go? So today, you all received the agenda. So today's goals are that for me share with you the ELDs, the overarching communication plan as it relates to all updates that will be available starting hopefully January 30th. And then after we go through sort of like the communication plan for all RFAs, we're going to sort of kind of narrow in though on Preschool Promise. And if there's questions about the equity fund, I think we have individuals here who could probably answer some questions, but not all. And so if you have questions about equity fund, we might need to take those questions back to Nikisha and her team to make sure we're giving you correct responses. So I just wanted to let you know, so this is start off global, and then we'll bring it down to Preschool Promise. All right. So just want to make sure this is sort of some laying the groundwork, making sure that everybody's, sort of has the foundational information about the potential or the applications that will be available through the ELD. And we have the Equity Fund, which will be in English and Spanish. We have Preschool Promise, which will be in English and Spanish. And then we have Oregon Pre-Kindergarten Expansion Grants applications. We have a Fiscal Agent application. And then we put others to be determined because as we work further along in our planning, we recognize that there are services that we might need to contract for or have a solicitation for, but that might be that's a sole source vendor for us, or that we have to go out to bid. So we're still unsure, and these would be much smaller grants that are in support of service delivery, but they're not the direct service grants themselves. So just want to let you know that there will be some other opportunities down the road. We're still trying to figure that out from there. All right. So before I go, any questions on these grants?
And this is Dana. Just one thing to note is that for the Equity Fund and Preschool Promise, applicants can submit their RFA in Spanish. So it's available in English and Spanish, and they can also do the submission in English or in Spanish.
All right. So then the next piece is we have at the Early Learning Division we're thinking about the work associated with communicating about the RFAs to all potential applicants as one bucket, and then we have the technical assistance that would be necessary for successful applicants or successful applications, and then we have a third bucket around implementation. So these are three different areas that we're focused on that work together for services, commencing in September and ensuring that all existing or new providers of services have the supports necessary to successfully implement the program and to reach the quality standards. And this is just an overview. I think all of you probably have seen this slide at some point or other, but I'm always kind of letting you know we are still on track with our timelines with the rules hopefully being adopted at the end of January at the Early Learning Council meeting, and then the application being released and applications being submitted to us. Actually, I think that's an April 2nd submittal date for applications, but that we would want grants executed by June with services beginning in fall. So just wanted to let you know, these are kind of high-level timelines for the 4 RFAs that we mentioned. All right, so Melanie, let me see if I can pronounce her last name. Mesneros, thank you so much. Melanie Mesneros, who is our communication director, is leading our global communication plan that relates to the release of the RFAs. So her goals are to drive awareness about the application and the process, and then also have a campaign aimed at key and target audiences, and then also to educate and engage target audiences on the timeline and requirements to apply. So these are sort of goals of her communication plan, and we pulled out some of the tasks that are included in it. She is working on developing landing pages on our website that are specific to each of the RFAs, so that potential applicants will have sort of a one-place catch-all for all the information and resources they need to, hopefully successfully submit their application. We are sending letters to target audiences for Preschool Promise. What we've done is there will be a letter that is sent out through the Office of Child Care to all like registered, recorded, licensed providers, and they will receive that by mail, and that's translated into 5 languages, and it'll also include sort of a readiness, a self-assessment for potential applicants. If I could please ask, I think we're getting a little bit of background, if you could please mute your phones. Thanks, I think we got that resolved. Okay, great. So all providers, whether they're currently participating in Preschool Promise, it's just if they are connected to the Office of Child Care, they will be receiving a letter that informs them about the Preschool Promise opportunity. I know for the Equity Fund, they're also doing some targeted mailings as well. And through their community engagement work, they have developed like a distribution list of interested applicants, and that list just continues to grow. So they have a couple different strategies on how to provide updates around the RFA to their target audiences. Then Melanie will also be working on news releases, doing a social media campaign. We are hoping to do some promotional videos. This actually came up as a suggestion that Preschool Promise seems pretty intimidating to a lot of providers. And so it was suggested that maybe we talk to a few existing Preschool Promise providers and have them just talk about their experience and what it's meant to them and their program, their business, to children and families. So we'll be trying to get those promotional videos prepared and available. And then our ELD webpage will be updated with new homepage banner and all the links to the RFAs, which will then go to those landing pages that I mentioned before. And then we want to be responsive. And so other activities might come up that we think are necessary for us to be able to really reach all potential applicants and to really have a great targeted approach to outreach. So we assume that there'll be more. So any questions or suggestions, because we really want this to be like I said, the other activities is we want to be responsive, and if you think that there's something in this that is missing, maybe you can put it in the chat box. There's a few there. Okay, great. Stop talking, Gwen, and read the chat box. Okay. So let's see. Will the slide deck be provided to us? Yes, we will make sure that this is provided. And also, this will also be sent to school districts. So I guess, and Sarah, I'm sorry. So when you say if this will be sent to school districts, is that the letter to all potential providers? Let me make sure because yeah, okay. Yeah, so the letter that is being sent through the Office of Child Care is really for those providers who are already connected to the system, but we will be doing targeted emails to school districts and also to ESDs. But we have the ability, we have email distribution lists for those potential providers, and thank you, we will add that on here because in its omission, it looks like we're not doing it. But it's a little bit easier because of the distribution list that we have, either through ODE or other agencies, to just do an email blast to to K-12s and ESDs, and also to our Head Start partners as well. We have those distribution lists through email. Okay.
And one thing to point is that the letter that's going to be sent out to the OCC mailing list is going to be sent out in 5 different languages. So it has been sent out for translation. So that's, up in the works too.
Yeah, so the question is, when will the mailings be expected to be sent out? So as Dana just mentioned, the letter and that self-assessment checklist is at the translators right now, and as soon as we get that back, we work with DAS actually to get the letters out, and so we've started that process. It will not get out to providers before the application release, but it'll definitely get out to them, within, my fingers crossed, my goal would be like a week or within that second week after the release of the RFA. And it's meant to be like, hey, there is an open application, there's an RFA that's open that you might be eligible for. If you're interested, please check us out. This is our website. And if you're not sure if you might be an eligible provider or if the program's right for you, here's a quick down and dirty checklist to kind of self-assess your program to see if this might be something you want to sign up for or apply for. And we can send out that checklist to all of you as well, and have it in your toolkit too. And on that, I should mention, we, as I said, like a toolkit, any of these communications, we would want you to have also, so that as you are engaging with, potential applicants in your community, that you have some of the resources. So, just in case they didn't get it in their mail or they didn't open that letter, that you would have the ability to be able to pass out hard copies if you would like to as well, or have electronic versions. And let's see, did we answer all the questions? Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, so let the CCR&Rs know when the letters are out. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Will the regional EC sector plans phase 1 also be available on the ELD site? Yes, it'll be the at a glance.
And the full plan.
And the full plan, yes.
For the RFA release, we'll have them up. We're working on it now.
But the at a glances will be translated into Spanish. And we have a request. Thank you, Rika, dates for all communications going out. Thank you, Lisa and Valerie Margie. Great. Appreciate that. Thank you for wanting to be part of the help. This is really helpful. All right. Also, we could be including the distribution. Perfect. All right. Are there any questions? Help me out, team. Okay. When are the regional community sessions taking place, and who will the? Okay. So I think that's, yep, that'll be, let's hold that question. I think we'll be talking about that. When you say you, oh, thank you, Beth. When I say you, do you mean hubs or CCR&Rs? I think that as I'm talking to all of you, it's collective, and I will try to be very clear if it is something just for CCR&Rs or just for early learning hubs. Thank you, Beth. Yes, and I will, when I say we as well, I will make sure that, is that collectively we, or is that just ELD we? Thank you, that's a good clarification. So I think we've...
You're good. You got it.
Okay, got them all? Okay. Great. So I'm going to turn this over to Dana, and it's perfect timing because I need to go grab my power cord. So I'll be right back.
Okay. Alrighty, so this is Dana Young. I'm the Preschool Promise Program Manager. So as we've been working on our RFAs, we really wanted to go ahead and take a holistic approach to the RFA, and the technical assistance is going to be provided across the state. So we've been developing partnerships with other entities across the state. One of them, so I'm going to go ahead and go through this list of activities and other partnerships that are going to be taking place during the RFA. I'll go ahead and ask to my colleagues there to go ahead and keep an eye on the chat box because I want to be focused here. So we'll go ahead and get started. In looking at the RFA, there is some fiscal pieces that applicants will need help with. For example, like developing a budget. There's a question there, for example, about what is your mission and vision for your business. They'll need some help with that. So we been talking with the Oregon Small Business Development Center Network. There's 19 networks across the state who, in their vein, they offer technical assistance to small businesses across the state, big and small. So in talking to them, what they have committed to go ahead and doing is to go ahead and provide technical assistance to RFA applicants when it comes to like developing like their mission and vision, if they need to go ahead and get registered with the Secretary of State, if they want to go from a sole proprietor to an LLC, anything that's related to that, any kind of goal setting, financial review, or any budget creation. So there's 19, like I said, centers across the state. They have bilingual, some of them have bilingual advisors as well. So they are very in tune with what we're trying to achieve. As a state, our goal, as a state, and I think across agencies, not just the early learning division, our goal is to go ahead and increase also like the number of contracts with the state. So that is one of their goals too. So they have jumped on the opportunity to go ahead and help us with that. And it's very tangible to them. So they're very intentional about the TA that they're going to be providing. In addition to that, there is also the Government Contract Assistance Program, who they're, once again, one of their goals is to go ahead and help small businesses get a contract with the state. So they'll be providing some support as well, and even just being aware of our RFAs in case they're coming into a cross with a childcare provider that they may be already working with, that they can tell them about this great opportunity. So it's also about, aside from that very direct technical assistance, it's also letting their own entities know about this opportunity with the state. And there's a question there, do they know that they will be providing this technical support? Yes, they are. So we've been in communication with them. They're excited and happy. They see it as this is very in line with what they do in their day-to-day basis of like helping small businesses. Internally, we have also developed, aside from the Small Business Development Center, aside from the GCAP, it's what we call GCAP, there are some other small entities across the state that provide also business technical assistance. So we've developed a quick handout as well. The applicants can go ahead and see. Some of them, once again, I'll go ahead and use, for example, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce up in Portland. They may already be working with some small businesses. So I think everybody's super excited. So that's on the business aspect of the RFA. And like I said, even in some of the questions when we're asking applicants about their mission and vision, they're like, hey, we can go ahead and help with that.
There's another question about, is there a cost associated with any of these services?
There isn't. There is no cost associated to the applicant. This is something that's available to them as a small business owner in the state of Oregon.
Dana, can you, I'm assuming that when you all do your, I know we're coming to some of these other things, but when you do, for example, your statewide webinars, of course, you're talking about these things during that time as well,
Correct.
Directly to the providers themselves.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. So that's a partner that's going to be helping us here with the RFA. And like I said, it's in line with their mission and their vision and just everything there. And then we also, there was a meeting last week with our CCRNRs. It sounds like just putting it all, in our plan here. Our CCRNRs are going to be helping with, if they have a computer lab, to be able to provide that as available to applicants, any paper copies that's needed. They may need our applicants may need help logging into the RFA portal, some language support. There's also been, an awareness of getting the word out. We know CCRNRs are, working with many types of providers across the state. So there has also been that opportunity to ensure that there is that awareness in community through some marketing and advertising. And there's some ELD roadshows, which I'll go ahead and talk about it in a little bit. Listening sessions, webinars. So that will be through the CCRNRs, very tangible items, as our CCRNRs colleagues have developed. There is a nice linkage, though, that is existing with the CCRNRs and the small business centers in communication with them. They want to work very closely with the CCRNRs. So we are, I'll give you an example. It sounds like there's some areas of the state where that's already going on. There's some CCRNRs and small business centers collaboration. There's some, I've heard about some cohorts for child care providers across the state. So that is, so what we're developing here internally is also doing like a crosswalk, like which small business center is, like who's the CCRNR and our vice versa for that party, and just linking them, because that is one of the goals. They want to be working in collaboration with the CCRNRs, and also for the CCRNRs to know that they have the resources you're working and coming across with providers, and vice versa. If the small business centers come into to something that they maybe needing help, is that collaboration vice versa too.
There's another question related to this. Adam, I did see your questions. I'm going to address those in just a minute, as they seem to be related yet slightly different. But the question is, have these agencies received info around child care specific business needs?
Yeah, the small business centers have. I think, you know, in looking at entities across the state who provide business technical assistance, that's the one that we've been working very closely. So they are very in tune with the RFA and what we're asking on the RFA. So they're mostly coming from the business. I think the CCRNRs are going to be kind of like that eye on very specific to child care needs.
And there's a question around sharing the contact information for the CBDC network, and I think that that'll be coming in a packet, right? Okay.
We're developing a nice little crosswalk that's going to go ahead and have the different small business development centers with their contact information, and then like which CCRNR is in that region that they cover. Like I said, they cover, there's 19 small business centers across the state, so now it's just about pairing them together. So that's, I'll go.
Yeah, there's a few other questions. So there was a question from around, is the TA with the CBDC just for application process or throughout the contract? And the response to that is it's just through the application process that we have. If you remember, we have the three buckets. There's sort of our communication plan, then it's the technical assistance around the application, the RFA, and then there are supports for implementation and quality. So the role of the CBDCs is really around the RFA and the application process.
Correct.
And then, Adam, I did capture your questions. There was a question around, since the stewardship committee was in charge of phase one, was an intended role for this group connected to, was there an intended role to be connected with the RFA and expansion? And I think I can respond in one way, but I wanted to give the community systems team the first go.
I think their connection to expansion is going to be around coordinated enrollment for publicly funded preschool, Adam, and others. And this is Joan. And there is going to be more information coming about what coordinated enrollment for publicly funded preschool will look like, and the assistance that we'll be providing funding to hubs to provide for the recruitment, eligibility determination, and program placement of related to preschool promise, and more of that information is coming.
Right. And I would say the other piece that I'm not sure if it's directly connected to the stewardship committee is that in our application review process, we will be asking for representatives from community to help us with the review of applications regionally, and that'll be Early Learning Hub region. So we will probably be reaching out to Early Learning Hubs and also CCRNRs to see if there are either staff on your teams or also or community representation that that can help us with the review of the applications at a regional level. So I'm not sure, Adam, if that would connect to the stewardship committee potentially. And then there was another question around the standards, and I think that what I'm going to do is a thank you. It was around timelines for the quality standards for preschool promise, and the suggestion and request for it to be in multiple languages. So I'm going to, since this is, I'm going to hold that, and it's as a task for us to follow up on sort of making sure that we have a clear communication document that shares with you the timelines for the standards and sort of our plan for them. So thank you. I don't have that here today, but I can see that's a need. So thank you for that question. And I think, just to make sure before we go on. Okay, thanks, Kelly. Okay, thanks. I think, sorry, it's great. Just trying to keep up with these. Are there any other, provider wants help in reviewing. So the question is, if a provider wants help in reviewing their application before submission, especially if it's in a language other than English or Spanish, is there a resource to direct them to?
Let me take a look into that. Yeah, I will say, like, for the small business centers, they have it available in English. In Spanish. They have those capabilities, so we can definitely look into that. You know, one of the things that we were trying to see, like, is there any help out there to actually write the RFA? And I think everybody wants to help, but then there was also that thought of, like, liability. What happens if I write the RFA for Gwen and then Gwen doesn't get it, and is that going to go ahead and put the liability on me? So right now, really, like, our technical assistance has been focused on and just helping applicants understand the RFA. For the budget creation and financial review, that's a very tangible piece that the small business centers can go ahead and provide help with and have offered to go ahead and do that for applicants.
Question around the literacy review of the RFA. We were aiming for a grade 9. Unfortunately, we were not able to get there. We deleted certain sections, rewrote others, really trying to determine, like, what was it in the RFA that was creating kind of a higher reading level, and we weren't able to pinpoint it. We really tried because we thought, okay, if we can kind of pinpoint what sections or language makes this, you know, a higher literacy level, it was challenging. And you know, there's no proof. This is Gwen's theory, so I'm just letting you know. But an RFA about educational services is jargony around educational services. And so I think that, so I think that has contributed to it. And fingers crossed, the hope is that since we're targeting applicants who have experience with early learning, that some of that jargon that might be increasing the reading level or the literacy level is sort of negated because of their, their own content knowledge. So, but yeah, we tried very hard to bring it down, and we're not able to pinpoint what was creating a higher literacy level.
What we have done is really just look at the RFA, and like Gwen mentioned, it's just trying to, take out areas where it may cause confusion. So we have really shortened the RFA as much as we could. I'll go ahead and move on to our next session of, technical assistance and resources. Like I said, going back, we're really trying to take a holistic approach to the technical assistance provided across the state. We're going to be doing a post-release webinar on February the 5th, one in English and one in Spanish. That's going to be facilitated by ELD staff. And that's really just opening up the RFA, taking people through the RFA, asking any questions on the RFA. We will also be doing, we call an RFA roadshow. We're going to be going across the state and answering people's questions on the RFA. And, we want this to be available and making sure that everybody knows. So we've selected certain areas of the state where this is going to be held. This will be done in collaboration with the CCRNRs, based on locations to be determined. Internally, we understand that with our target audience specifically to preschool promise, providers are taking care of the children during the day, and they may be filling this RFA later on in the evening. So we have developed an ELD RFA after hours hotline that's going to be available in the week, during the weekday from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. There's a specific number that we've developed for that, and then some dates. Then we also have open a Saturday helpline as well. That's going to be available from 8 a.m. to noon, and just being tangible. We are going to have a sole point of contact here at the ELD where individuals can send their questions in English and in Spanish. That's going to be monitored here internally, so applicants have the option of just sending a question or maybe a confusion, or maybe they're confused about something. So these are some very internal, like ELD staff activities that we're going to be doing. And like I said, we're trying to go ahead and be available after hours on the weekend by email, in person, and so on.
Yeah, just a plug that we would love to schedule these the roadshow events as soon as possible. So for CCR&R directors, we will be reaching out very quickly, probably this week, to try to coordinate with you and get those on the calendar. We would love to have those dates incorporated into our RFA materials as soon as possible with our anticipated release date of January 30th. So just want to let you know that we're hoping to get that all finalized over the next week and a half.
And then one thing to point out, so as far as the roadshow, like we have identified like cities that we're saying, yes, we will be there at that city. And then we understand, and this is to both groups, hubs and CCR&Rs, you're developing like maybe a meeting or something, and that's, we ask maybe like a week's notice, and then we can see about being available remotely if time allows it. As you all can imagine, there's a lot of stuff going on, but as you can see, our plan for technical assistance is really embodying a lot of different partners across the state, making use of already existing research. I think Kelly pointed out, super excited that we're collaborating with the Small Development Business Center because that is in their nature, so we were able to go ahead and make that linkage and just ensuring that happens. We didn't want an applicant to go to the Small Business Center and Small Business Centers be very confused about what this RFA is. So everybody's working in collaboration. We'll go ahead and move to our next area because we just talked about the RFA technical assistance. Now for a successful implementation of preschool promise, I do have one more slide. This slide just shows you the different entities and partners that we've been working at. One partner that I forgot to mention here is the Economic and Business Equity Office, who really was also the one linking all these different, the small business centers, GCAP. There's also a link to a task force back in the day as far as really increasing the amount of contracts with the state and how to reduce some of the barriers. That's something that office is kind of undertaking too. And then obviously, who are the CCR&Rs, who's the early learning hubs, who's the small business centers, and so on. So with that in mind, we'll go ahead and move into our next phase of program implementation, which is provider support. So they submit the RFA, they get selected, now what? So that is what we'll be talking about now.
Yep, all right. So for implementation, operation, and quality support, we will be looking to the CCR&Rs, and there will be resources available for CCR&Rs to accomplish these tasks. So CCR&Rs will be working on providing technical assistance on quality standards in Spark. So this includes program operation, also developing CQI plans. We also have some resources that have come through the Student Success Act for coaching. So we will also have instructional coaches that will focus on quality instruction and provide peer learning community opportunities. And also the instructional coach would develop professional development plans and support inclusionary practices and environments. And as we go further in, their additional duties might apply, but that really are some of the high level, and that's a big task. And then also it would be supports around instructional leadership, and we're working on developing what duties will apply there, because first we need to really think about the competencies for instructional leadership, but I know that all of the CCR&Rs right now are sending QISs to the Lead, Learn, Excel trainings, which are focused on instructional leadership, skill development, and competency development. So more to come on that. And then for our early learning hubs will focus on coordinated enrollment, and we'll have resources available to have a coordinator or a specialist, however, whatever that title, however that would work in your agency, it's not the whole scope of what a coordinated enrollment individual do or what we would be asking the early learning hubs to do in regard to coordinated enrollment. This list here is really specific to preschool promise, and so we would be working with early learning hubs to that the hubs would be responsible for outreach and recruitment, eligibility determination, selection and placement of families into the Preschool Promise provider sites, helping to manage those recruitment plans and activities, and also maintaining wait lists for the program, and that they would be collaborating with all Preschool Promise providers and other programs, so maybe like a Head Start, regarding enrollment and recruiting, and then connecting families and providers to community resources. And like I said, this is really just specific to Preschool Promise supports, but there would be other duties that apply more at a community level for all other like tasks or activities associated with coordinated enrollment. And I would ask if there's anything else that the community systems team would like to add on that.
And just to draw all the logic links here, of course, you all know that this work around coordinated enrollment was forecasted as a part of the next phase in the ECE sector work, which started, of course, with the planning. Then coordinated enrollment is really this next phase. Coordinated enrollment for publicly funded preschool is our real target and focus area. We're very fortunate that we have funding from the Student Success Act to help to support to have positions, as well as our new PDG grant is also going to be helping with coordinated enrollment. The work that SRI is doing with early learning hubs. So we're really trying to package this together, and there is certainly a lot more information to come around coordinated enrollment, both in the slightly larger picture than just what is Preschool Promise, but much more specific information coming around Preschool Promise. So we look forward to talking with you more about that very soon.
And then, do you want to do this?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was going to speak to the coordinated enrollment. One thing that we're going to be doing, like internally here, is we're trying to go ahead and develop also more guidance, right, with the eligibility and selection process and placement for Preschool Promise children and families. So our hope is that, you know, we'll be able to go ahead and provide instructions on how to do that. I remember the first time that Preschool Promise was launched and helping providers do eligibility and selection. Some providers, I know as a coordinator, we needed to go ahead and develop our own processes. So now the goal will be is that here we develop the processes and then we just hand that over to you so you can implement, obviously. So we're working really closely here with our community systems team to go ahead and develop that. As far as our early learning division, we'll be responsible. Many more duties, additional duties may apply to that. Many more additional duties will apply, but we have onboarding technical assistance, program monitoring and oversight, grant management and technical assistance in that area, data collection and reporting, and provide statewide training and technical assistance. That is another thing that we are trying to embody, like next program year, is how do we do statewide training in some of the different areas, not just Preschool Promise, but even our other state-funded programs. You want to add anything to that?
Great. There are a couple questions in the chat box that I think it's time to kind of address those. Let's see, I've got to go back and find where they start here. I think. Oh, okay. Wow, flying in. Okay. Okay. I responded to yes, the slide deck will be out, and then Beth had a question around. Did I miss one, Denise?
I think there's one from Christine about how much can.
Next one after Beth is.
A question around languages.
Oh, okay. 11:41 is the time for Christine.
Okay.
11:41 was the time.
That's why the date stamped. Got it, Marge. Thanks. Denise is saying, if you have a chart for completion, no, that's not.
Right above that one.
Can you just read it?
Yeah, and because there's a lot. I see. I think the one, it was around the language.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, got it. Okay, sorry. I apologize because I thought that we had talked about language supports, and that's what I thought. Okay, so it's the second part. Only around the RFA supports available, or can we help with clarification of the questions? Okay, and I think that this, Joan, was in what you shared with CCR&Rs.
Yeah.
So would you like to address that again?
Well, I think what we're really trying to avoid is somewhat of what Dana alluded to, which is making sure that really it should be the early learning division that's clarifying questions. Like if people don't understand the RFA questions, it seems to me like a first point would be calling the warm line or getting in touch with ELD to clarify those before providing assistance. And then if that information needs to be translated for that individual, I could see that the CCR&R would support that. And obviously, if it's the same question that you've already gotten ELD assistance with, or if it's a question we've officially answered in an FAQ, then I think translating that question would be fine. But I think we're really trying to avoid encourage, yes. But I think we're really trying to avoid individual interpretation of the questions and trying to make sure that the questions really are being interpreted by ELD.
I'm seeing Christine nod, so that's, yeah. I think it'll, our success on this will really be dependent on how well we're able to keep our FAQ updated and incorporate questions that were received, through various channels. So I think that'll be really important so that any early learning hub or CCR&R staff who might be asked a question, I think that the FAQ will be your resource to help you be responsive, with that provider in the moment. Okay, so then there were other questions. Will there be additional sites selected for the roadshow? At this point, no, but it's really a time factor, and we were really, I know that the Equity Fund has roadshow sites selected as well, and they're different. Some of them are different than Preschool Promise. In fact, there's only a few, I think, that overlap. And the rationale with the sites that we chose for the Preschool Promise roadshow were we currently have a lot of Preschool Promise services along the I-5 corridor, and so we were trying to sort of get off of the I-5 corridor and also be in communities where Preschool Promise isn't occurring already, because we thought that providers in that community might have more questions and also hasn't had an opportunity to, interact with the ELD. So that was sort of our rationale behind the locations for Preschool Promise. But if there's a specific desired need, potentially, but we are not able to go to all regions, unfortunately, but we might be able to piggyback onto the Equity Fund roadshow as well.
The only option would be is like I said, giving us a week's notice and see if we may be able to be there by remotely by phone and answer questions.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yes. So we have selected the ones that will be in person, and then we understand that there's a lot of excitement across the state with this, so just give us a week's notice and let us know if that's something that we could attend remotely at least. And I'm only speaking for Preschool Promise.
So there are some questions around the standards and if they're incorporated into the RFA so that providers know what they are sort of getting into, I guess. And then let's see. So the standards, do you want to take that, Dana?
Yeah. This is Dana. In looking at our RFA, there was a summarized version of the standards because we understand it's going to go ahead and take time, right? So I think that we've been receiving feedback like if the standard's going to be like day one, they have to go ahead and supply that. That's not realistic. That was never the intent. It's really a way of like going on a scaffolding type of approach with our standards. So we understand that's why right now, with who's going to be providing the technical assistance and support and collaboration with the CCR&Rs, we know that we'll need to go ahead and get our CCR&Rs trained on the standards and how that goes. So as far as the RFA, it's really a summarized version. And then as far as like the implementation of the standards, there will be a scaffolding, right? So.
Yeah, and Dina, if you want, this might help, and potentially, if you allow me to be the presenter, I'll show them that checklist, sort of how we're approaching it. And I think, because I think the self-assessment checklist might kind of get to what Beth might be needing here. So I'll grab it when
you want to be presenter.
Yeah. And then we'll have to switch it back to Dana. Okay. So what I'm going to share with you now, and it's not the final version because Dana actually made it better by, this is the version, the content is the same, but it's much prettier now. Is it there? No, not yet?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, I can't see it. That's the problem. Whoops, you don't want to see that. Let's see, pull that up again. Okay, there, now I can see it. So the checklist really first and foremost, it's like, are you an eligible provider, yes or no? And so, oops, every time I switch, it goes. And then we actually get into like facilities. So really wanting to know, this would be for new providers, for them to think about, do they have enough square footage to actually provide an appropriate space for preschoolers? So there's just a couple questions around square footage, indoor, outdoor space, and are they able to provide a developmentally appropriate learning environment for preschool children? And then the second set of questions is really around the program components. And these are not, are you doing, these are you willing to? And this gets to the scaffolding approach. Are you willing to, offer at least 900 hours, with the days a week? Are you willing to participate in Spark, to implement a curriculum, to implement developmental screenings and assessments, provide opportunities for parents to engage? Are you willing to provide culturally responsive or culturally specific programming? Participate in CFP, if that's appropriate for their program. And then there's questions about the actual income levels of families, like, are you willing to serve children whose family income is at or below 200%, or children in foster care, children who have IFSPs? Are you willing to implement a no suspension or expulsion policy? So just really trying to get out some of the key components of the program so that there's no surprises to potential applicants. And then also collaboration around professional development, record keeping and reporting. But you can see, are you willing to collaborate with the early learning hub in your community? Are you willing to collaborate with the child care resource and referral agency? So we really wanted to kind of make it known right up front that there's a requirement that they engage with you in the delivery and service of Preschool Promise. So I hope that, and I'll send it back to you. Let's see. Oops. Did you grab it? Nope. So, presenter 2, hang on one second. There's a whole list. Are you able to send it to her, Denise? I think I can find her. Okay, got it. There. Okay.
Got it.
I think you're good. Okay. So I think, it's not the full standards, but it definitely gives providers, a real overview of what the program entails. Then the next question is, when will CCRNRs know what the expectation of funding associated with implementation? I assume we will need to hire staff. Yeah, we have a timeline that we'll go over regarding the timeline for the implementation of supports for quality. And then as soon as possible, we will be working out the funding distribution to support those required tasks. Another question, how will providers learn about and understand the coordinated enrollment process? Is that also described in the RFA? Do you want to handle? Okay. Well, what I can say is what it does say in the RFA, though, is that that providers will be working with the hubs around eligibility and coordinating with the hubs. So it's a mention of it so that they're aware that that is a requirement. But we didn't, it's not like there were specific questions around it. It's more of an awareness. Will universal enrollment forms be developed and provided? Yes. Will you answer Christine Waters' question? Thank you. Yes, I had to find it. I think we got it. Will all providers of Preschool Promise be required to participate in the coordinated enrollment process, and will that be outlined in the RFA? It's not outlined in the RFA. It'll be in the coordinated enrollment processes. I think the only providers at this point that we are, still thinking and need to work through is our Head Start partners who have very specific eligibility processes, and so we would want to make sure that we're not imposing something on them, or how might they be able to help the early learning hubs by having, if a Head Start is doing eligibility for Head Start, would that also qualify as determining eligibility? So I think that's around some shared data sharing agreements or some shared processes. So, but at this point, I think Head Starts are the only other entity in community other than hubs that are participating in Preschool Promise right now who have experience with determining income level eligibility for programming. So what is the current enrollment plan timeline? Okay, I think we're going to get to the timeline.
We'll get to that.
Okay, and thank you. These are great questions coming, Beth. I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer these all thoroughly right now. So let's go to the timeline.
Yeah, and what we can do, because we know there's lots of questions, and there's probably going to be a lot more questions at the end of this call, so we can go ahead and develop like a Q&A kind of deal, even just for this specific call. I'm sure you may have some suggestions, so we'll collaborate with our colleagues here on who do you send those questions to, and because I'm sure that you're going to have more questions.
Yeah. So there is one that was sent in that doesn't have to do with timeline, so and actually addresses this. So and the reason I'm reading these is, one, it helps me process, but also for people who are on the phone. So, so given the centralization of support services, monitoring and oversight, grant management, data collection and reporting to providers at the ELD level, what is the division's capacity building plan to replace what hubs have done thus far to support providers? So our capacity building, we, for our actual internal staffing capacity, and thank you, great question, because we recognize that all of those components are what current Preschool Promise hubs have been doing in the field and continue to do. And so we're hoping that this division of sort of labor between CCR and our hubs and the early learning division will capture all of that. We do not have a lot of new staff coming to the early learning division, but we do have some that we will not be able to hire for until the SSA funds are available to us. So we do have more capacity coming at the early learning division, but also I mentioned earlier that we would probably need to have other solicitations for essential services and support equality, but we're not sure yet if those would be sole source or whether we'd have to go through an RFA process for sort of like a statewide monitoring entity or a statewide evaluation, you know, of program quality. So there are certain components that we've had sort of community-based around data collection. One example would be like, you know, utilizing the class assessment. So how do we maybe use that as sort of a statewide, and how might the early learning division either have small contracts or sole source for those type of supports that we know are necessary. So more to come. This isn't a full build out, and we recognize that we need to be looking at purchasing additional supports for full implementation and quality.
You know what this answers, I think the one question that we've been getting asked is like, who's going to be, provide NTA technical assistance support when it comes to like the standards, the quality, the coaching, the assessment, what is class, what is CS goal, all of that. And that through our plan, that will be the CCRNRs. And then as far as like the eligibility, right, we want to make sure that we go ahead and help our providers, especially our small entities, our small in-homes, not burden them with eligibility and, you know, counting pay stubs and figuring all that out, so that it brings this opportunity to now, through the coordinated enrollment big plan, it's really just focus on how do we alleviate some of that. But yeah, we can go over the.
Yeah, I just want to let everyone, there's a lot of questions that are coming up around the coordinated enrollment plan, and I think that at this point, capturing all of those and using that those questions to inform some of the documents that we create in support of communicating the full plan to hubs. Will that work for the community systems team? Yep, yeah. I'm seeing some nods around. And then thank you for the input around the self-assessment checklist. I appreciate that feedback, Margie and Carol. We're hoping it'll be helpful. And there, Dana, thank you for that question. I think that the RFA application process and kind of the scoring might take care of your concern around what if they're not willing to partner collaboratively with other agencies. Because it is a requirement of being a Preschool Promise provider that you would be receiving services and supports through the early learning hubs and the CCRNR. So it's not really an option. The level of supports might vary, though. I'll say that. Okay, the collaboration. Thank you for the feedback. Thank you, Adam, for that. That's a good point around the the Q&A did not ask about blended and braided funds. So thank you for that input. I'll take that in consideration. What we were trying to do is not make Preschool Promise seem obtainable and to many providers, but to also be very transparent in the really foundational requirements of the program model. Okay.
Alrighty.
I think so.
So now we're going to go over into our timeline, our implementation timeline for quality supports and coordinated enrollment. I think as you are all thinking, we're going to all get really, really busy, right? So our goal is to go ahead and have executing planning grants for what we just talked about for the CCRNRs and the hub to go ahead and be able to participate in this implementation by March. Then the goal will be is that by April, the CCRNRs and hubs will go ahead and recruit and hire staff based on the grant that we released to be able to go ahead and fulfill these duties. Then do you want to?
No, keep
okay, I'll keep on. Okay. So then in May is that the staff that will be executing these duties is all up and running with their orientation plans and everything. We're also are looking at the Summer Institute to go ahead and provide additional training and support for for hub staff and CCRNR staff to embark on this journey with us. And then in July, we understand there's going to be some provider kickoff meetings. There's going to be some CCRNR kickoff meetings with the Preschool Promise providers. I'm sure there's going to be some at the hubs. We're probably going to have our kickoff meetings. So we're really looking at that month of July of having kickoff meetings across the state for current Preschool Promise providers that were selected through this RFA. And then that in September, CCRNRs and hubs will be fully engaged in this implementation role. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
The only thing I would add is, in sort of the execution of some planning grants, we'd be working, with the directors, right? And really making sure that all of you, as directors of either the early learning hubs or of the CCRNRs, that you fully understand, what's being asked of your agency and making sure that you have the supports necessary to, begin the implementation activities around hiring for staff. And then just the other thing that I wanted to indicate is, the provider kickoff meetings, it's, we indicate July. I wish we could do them sooner, but the new providers will not have any resources available to them until the SSA funds are made available to us. So in a sense, it's very difficult for us to ask any new providers to participate in any activities prior to them having resources. So I just want to, I just want to know we're looking into that. We are planning on having all of our agreements fully executed in June, with funds being available in July. Boy, I wish if they could get money sooner, but it's just not going to be available to us. So I just wanted to, if you have questions around like, why can't we get the providers in sooner? That's primarily why it's difficult to ask people to do work if they don't have the resources yet associated with that work. So questions or comments on the timeline? Not seeing any. And I was wondering, do we need to, were there questions that I skipped over that were associated with the timeline that we might want to go back and check to make sure? If you can find, if you could read it out loud, that'd be great.
Given the timeline around coordinated enrollment, what is your advice to existing Preschool Promise hubs about doing outreach and recruitment? We typically do this right now.
Yes, that is why I think it's very critical. When we met, kind of had the preview meeting with the current Preschool Promise hubs, we need to set up those transition planning meetings and very soon, because we recognize that you're in your cycle, and we want to, there are certain activities that will need to continue through, this implementation, and then there are some activities that we need to think about. What is the right time to transition, or stop those tasks as we prepare for this new implementation model. So that's why it's going to be critical, because some of you are on different timelines based on just your own structure and how you've managed your work plan around Preschool Promise implementation. So we just encourage, I think we need to individualize those transition plans, I guess is what I'm saying. So let's get those meetings set up quickly.
Yeah. We'll go ahead and get the schedule, and I think one of the things to know for the current Preschool Promise hubs, we have this big plan of implementation and there's work and all that, but then there's still that current grant that we're managing and stuff. So there's still going to be the requirement of the different reports that are due, so it's business as usual for the current grant that you have been awarded. And then there's this other collaboration and stuff as far as how implementation is getting ready to get rolled out.
Yeah, there was another question around is the Summer Institute for everyone? To be determined. We are seeing that as an opportunity it's at the right time. There's a location. There's already work underway to host that and to have that event. So as much as we can build off of it, the better. But we recognize that we might need to have the timing of it might not fit everything. So I think it will work well for many of sort of our trainings and technical assistance that we want to provide to either early learning hubs or CCRNRs, but it might not meet all the needs. I envision that we'll have multiple training opportunities as we implement this plan.
Nope, that's all we have.
Slides.
And so I think next steps, we'll go ahead and share the slide deck, right? And then we'll go ahead and provide a point of contact to go ahead and get any questions specific to this, right? We know that there's going to be a lot of thoughts that after we end this call, so we'll go ahead and provide that one point of contact here within the ELD, where you can go ahead and send some questions in regards to what was presented for you today. RFAs, all of that stuff is something different, but it's just, as far as Preschool Promise Implementation 2.0. So I want to make sure, as you can all imagine, we're all are really busy and are getting busy, so we'll hate for you to send in a question about what we presented and then not get answered or get lost. So we'll go ahead and decide a point of contact that we can go ahead and rely on. Alrighty. Okay. Well,
any final questions or comments? I want to again thank all of you for your time today. I know this was a lot of information. I really appreciate all your questions and your comments. It's really helpful for us as we're, we have a plan, but we want to be responsive and make sure that it's the plan has room for improvement, and we need your input on that improvement. So thank you. And there's a comment from.
Just a quick update, just a reminder to the CCR&R directors, as soon as we hang up here, we're going to take about just a couple-minute break, and we're going to reconvene. Please call back in on the go-to meeting information that Margie sent you yesterday.
Okay. And there was, before we sign off, thank you, Lisa. There was a question, did the community session question get addressed? And I'm not sure. I want to make sure.
I think that one did, because we talked about both the sessions and also the past.
Got it. Right. So I think the response to the community session question was that we probably won't be able to add any more in person, but that if there's a request, we could probably do a remote session.
With a good week's notice, please.
Yeah. All right.
Alrighty.
Thank you very much.
All. Have a great day.
Take care.